Emperor Wu of Han and the Farmer. The sun hung high in the sky, its golden rays scorching everything below. In the stifling summer heat, endless fields of rice seemed to shimmer and gasp for relief. Along a dusty road cutting through the countryside, a grand procession advanced. The sound of galloping hooves and jingling armor echoed through the fields as Emperor Wu of Han's entourage passed. Villagers stood at a respectful distance, bowing their heads and clearing the way for their sovereign's majestic train. Riding at the head of the procession was Emperor Wu himself, the mighty ruler of the Han Dynasty. His penetrating gaze swept across the countryside. Quiet and contemplative, he observed the golden fields and humble straw-roofed homes scattered in the distance. This journey was part of his inspection tour, not only to survey his vast dominion, but also to gauge the well-being of his people. Yet deep down, his thoughts remained tethered to matters of power and territorial expansion, his lifelong ambitions. As the procession reached a sprawling field, Emperor Wu suddenly signaled for a halt. His keen eyes had been caught by a peculiar sight in the midst of the shimmering expanse. An old farmer was toiling with his plow. The man was frail, his back bent like a bow under the weight of years and labor. His shoulders, narrow and wiry, seemed to bear the burden of the blazing sun itself. A tattered straw hat sat askew on his head, offering little shelter to a face withered by wind and sun. Sweat streamed down his lined cheeks as he guided an aging ox, its steps as slow and deliberate as its master's. Intrigued, Emperor Wu dismounted his steed. He walked briskly toward the farmer, his golden robes trailing in the dirt, leaving his entourage frozen in astonishment. A guard instinctively stepped forward to intervene, but the emperor raised his hand, commanding silence. "Old man," the emperor began, his voice steady and warm, yet imbued with unmistakable authority. "You labor so hard under this sun. Do you have enough to eat?" The farmer paused, looking up at the regal figure before him. His calloused hand gripped the plow handle for support as he steadied the stranger, though he recognized the fine silk and commanding presence. He did not recognize the emperor. His response was unhesitating, plain yet profound. "Whether we have enough to eat depends on those above us." The farmer's words struck an unexpected chord. Emperor Wu's brow furrowed slightly as he absorbed the reply. Meanwhile, the men in his entourage exchanged uneasy glances, their faces tense with the unspoken fear that the farmer's frankness might provoke imperial wrath. But instead of anger, a faint smile crept across the emperor's lips. He tilted his head slightly, intrigued, and continued, "What do you mean by that? Are you saying those above you decide whether you eat or starve?" The old man leaned against his plow, meeting the emperor's gaze without a trace of fear. His voice was calm yet firm, each word carrying the weight of years spent enduring life's hardships. "It's simple. If the ruler loves his people, appoints virtuous officials, and keeps the corrupt at bay, we farmers will naturally have enough. But if the ruler indulges in luxury and ignores the people's suffering, then men like me can only hope to starve." A hush fell over the field. Even the chirping of cicadas seemed to fade. The emperor's retinue held their breath, their eyes darting nervously between the emperor and the farmer. They feared for the farmer's life, for his words were as sharp as arrows, striking at the heart of governance itself. Yet Emperor Wu stood unmoving, his face unreadable, his eyes fixed intently on the old man, misinterpreting the silence. The farmer assumed his words had fallen on deaf ears. He wiped the sweat from his brow and pressed on. "Look around you, sir. Every day we work from dawn till dusk, breaking our backs to plant and harvest. We don't ask for riches, just enough to eat. But sometimes, it's not the heavens that fail us, it's men. Corrupt officials take from us without mercy. They seize our oxen, confiscate our land, and tax us beyond reason. Even when we gather a decent harvest, we can't be sure we'll keep it. If those at the top do not uphold justice, how can we survive?" His words hung heavy in the air, like a storm cloud waiting to burst. Emperor Wu stood silently, his face a mask of contemplation. For years, he had been surrounded by flattering courtiers and glowing reports of prosperity. Yet here, in the middle of a sunlit field, the unvarnished truth had been laid bare before him. He saw in the farmer's eyes the resilience of a man who had endured much, yet still possessed the courage to speak his mind. Finally, the emperor spoke. "If the ruler you speak of were standing before you now, what would you advise him?" Without hesitation, the farmer replied, his gaze unwavering. "If you were the ruler, I would tell you to care for the poor. Don't trust the sweet words of sycophants. We need land to grow rice, water for our fields, and oxen to plow. Take care of these things, and we'll take care of the rest. When the people are fed and clothed, the nation will prosper. But if we starve, the empire will collapse no matter how strong it seems." The farmer's words cut deeper than any sword. Emperor Wu did not respond immediately. He stood there, his shadow stretching long across the sunlit field, his thoughts a torrent of reflection. After a long pause, he turned and began walking back to his horse. His retinue quickly fell into formation, their faces carefully neutral. No one dared speak as the emperor mounted his steed and gave the signal to continue. The aftermath. The emperor's journey did not end in that field, but something within him had shifted. Upon his return to the palace, Emperor Wu summoned his ministers and issued sweeping reforms. He decreed a reduction in taxes for farmers, introduced policies to protect their land and resources, and ordered harsh penalties for corrupt officials. His focus shifted from conquest to cultivation, understanding that the true strength of his empire lay not in its armies, but in the hands of its people. The story of Emperor Wu of Han and the farmer became a tale passed down through generations. It served as a reminder that even the mightiest ruler must heed the voices of the humblest subjects. A great leader is not one who wields power without question, but one who listens, learns, and acts for the greater good. For only when the people are nourished and at peace can a nation truly endure.